Hello and welcome to the daily podcast with Tricia and Michelle. We're just two friends reading through the Bible chronologically and encouraging you to do the same. You are listening to, as I said, the Daily Bible Podcast, and you can find us online, dailybiblepodcast.net. And you can join us by using your own one-year Bible, or you can print up a reading plan off of dailybiblepodcast.net.
And we would
And
love for you to join us. We are so excited about this, and we're so excited that you can be part of it.
okay, I don't know if you can hear me at all, but you just froze up.
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay.
Because
All I got was we are so excited for you to join us.
I think it caught it. So
Okay.
it was just that was all I had.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Uh, Trisha, what isn't there a Facebook group that people can get online and be encouraged to see where everybody else is and also leave comments? Did we set that up?
We did. It's Daily Bible Podcast. If they just look in Facebook, put Daily Bible Podcast, it's called the Daily Bible Podcast Community. And we are there to connect with you, to hear what you are getting out of God's Word as you read along with us.
So encourage us as we encourage you, and hopefully we are encouraging you. So today is day 2, and we are reading Genesis 4, verse 1 through chapter 5, verse 32, First Chronicles 1, verse 1 through 4, and Genesis 6, verses 1 through 22. So today we are getting a lot. There are just a lot of things happening. And as you remember yesterday, we read about God creating the world, and oh, what a wonderful and beautiful world that he created. It was a perfect world, but then the world was marred by sin. And so today we are seeing that sin continue to wreak havoc in the lives of God's people. Adam and Eve's son Cain killed his Adam and Eve's son Cain killed their other son Abel, and God deals with him. And then Cain went away from the presence of God and settled east of Eden in Nod. And there he starts his family and the generations after him. Then Adam and Eve had another son. They named him Seth, and Seth began his family, beginning with his son Enosh. And this line of Adam called, and this line of Adam called on the name of the Lord. But remember, Cain didn't. And in chapter 5, we see the genealogy of Adam and Noah, the years that these people lived. Seth lived 912 years. Just imagine. Trisha, can you imagine
That's a
with me?
long time.
It is such a long
I'm
time.
51. I'm 51, and it seems like so much has happened.
I'm just like, oh, that's just, it seems like a never-ending life. And yet, well, that was normal for them. And
Mhm.
and just as we read chapter 5 and read the genealogy, we just see that there are a lot of years in there. And at first glance, or I should say at my first glance, you can almost gather that this is one big happy family that lived a good life. Or I would like to say that, yeah, that makes sense. But it's not what we see in verse 29 of chapter 5. That is where Lamech, Noah's dad, says, "Out of the ground that the Lord has cursed this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the painful
Mhm.
toil of our hands." And then in chapter 6, we also see how God's children were living in such a way that God even said, "I am sorry." They were living in such a way that we see these words: "The Lord was sorry he had made man on earth, and it grieved him to his heart."
Things are bad now. I can't
Yeah.
imagine. Like, we think the just world is getting worse and worse, but it must have been really bad back then.
Yeah, it had to have been for God to say, "I'm sorry I created this world."
Mhm.
Like, we know that he was already had a rescue plan in place and everything, but still for him to say, "In this moment, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
This makes me cringe.
Mhm. But then we have hope. We have Noah.
We have Noah. He was a man for a big, big job. He had big expectations on his shoulders.
Yeah, and then it's in Genesis 6:9. It says Noah was a righteous man, the only blameless person living on the earth at the time, and he walked in close fellowship with God. Like that's a lot of pressure.
Mm,
And I think so many times we think, oh, the people around us, they influence us. Obviously, if Noah was the only righteous one, he was not being influenced by other people. Instead, when everyone else was doing the wrong thing, he chose God and he chose to walk with God, and they cherished that relationship. Noah and God cherished that relationship.
mhm. That is such a hard thing to do, to not be influenced for the bad from outside influences, from peoples around us, from people in our community. That is such a hard thing to do. I can't imagine in that day and time how hard that was for Noah.
Yeah, and I think as a parent raising kids, it's always like watch who your friends are, be careful who you
Mm,
are letting influence you, whether it's friends in real life, whether it is TikTok people or Facebook people or
yeah.
all these influencers out there. They're called influencers for a reason because they are trying to influence you in one direction or another. And we know how easy it is to look at people and see all that they have. They seem to be beautiful and smart and
Mm,
saying all the right things and doing all the right things. But if it's not following God's way, then that can lead us the wrong way. And something I talk to the kids all the time. And I even talk about what I faced as a youth wanting to follow the wrong directions, hoping that they'll
mm.
learn from me. Sometimes they do listen, sometimes it is hard to see them making wrong choices. But, we can keep our relationship strong with God no matter what is going on around us.
Yeah, we need to pray to be like Noah.
Yeah,
Y-
absolutely.
y- here's a couple of things that stood out for me today as I was reading. God did not turn his back on Cain.
Mm.
Here's Cain. He kills his brother, and then God asks him where Abel is, and Cain says, "I don't know. I don't know." I mean, it was kinda like when Eve and, Adam were caught in the garden, and God's like, "What did you guys do?" "I don't know. I don't know." You know, how many times when we sin against God or against somebody else do we try to get out of it or make it seem like it's not so bad, like, "I don't know," but God
It's yeah.
knows.
It's not really that big of a deal or it's not that big of a problem. Look at these
Yeah.
other people, look what they're doing. It's so easy to like try to deflect it. And Cain was couldn't deflect it because obviously he had done something and God was
Mhm,
calling him out.
mhm. And God knew. God knew that the blood was crying from the ground. God knew, and he knows our case and he knew Cain's. And then Cain freaks out because his punishment is too much for him to handle. He's like, "I killed my brother, but you can't do this to me, God. These consequences are too huge." And and all God really said, well, it's not in the word, but I'll say God said was, "Calm down. I will protect you."
Yeah.
And Cain had done something so horrible, and God was like, "You have consequences, but I will protect you. Like, I am here for you." And that brings me such great hope to know that there is really nothing I can do or say or sin against God or sin against others that God's going to say, "You did wrong. You did really wrong. You messed up. You sinned against me, but I'm here for you. I will protect you." That brings me such hope.
That just brings me so much hope, and I love that you brought that up. And I love that so much because God doesn't want to give up on us. Just the
Mhm.
opposite. And the fact that He protected Cain just shows me that He will protect me and you and all our listeners. We can go to Him even when we sin and we can confess. It's not like he's going to turn his back on us, he's going to ignore us. Like he wants us to come to him. And even like
Mhm.
Cain was kind of whining, like, I
Yeah.
don't, first of all, he's like, I don't know. And then he's like, all these people are going to hurt me. And God still was there to protect him. It wasn't like Cain said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have done something differently or I'll do things better. He wasn't doing any of that, and God still protected him. And I think that makes us realize like we can come to God no matter what we've done, no matter
Mm,
what trials we face, no matter what
mhm.
we desire to do, what temptations we have, we can turn to God and He can help us and He can protect us.
Well, and I think the beauty also is knowing that God was willing to protect Cain, knowing that Cain was gonna walk away from him.
Hmm.
And God still was like, "I'm here in your camp. I'm
Hmm.
here." I would have just there's a part of me wanting to would have loved to see the story play out differently than Cain just walking away from God.
Right.
But okay, so that brings us to the word for today. And so here is the word for today. It is justice. Because God is justice. He is just. And I think so many times when we think of God, we think, well, He is perfect and He is love. And He is also full of
Hmm.
justice. And he judged Cain, and he provided a way out for Cain. Like his justice is perfect. We have a skewed sort of thinking of justice today because the court system, and while the court system is very good, there are times that
Yeah.
you could go to court, and even though you feel like you're on the right side, you could lose,
You
and you end
cannot
up
get
being on the
justice.
wrong side. And yet God's justice is perfect. And then we see that he's wiping out the world, the whole world except for one family. And so let's just pull this string right here, and we're seeing how God is rescuing his people. Like his perfect justice is rescuing people, and he's laying the groundwork for the rest of history.
I love that. So, how can we apply that to like our everyday lives, thinking about God's
That's
justice?
good. Mhm.
Do you have any insight on that, Michelle?
Well, as I was thinking here and just how and reading the story and how God dealt with Cain, God didn't cast him aside, and he
Hmm.
doesn't do that with us. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about just a little bit earlier, is no matter what I do, no matter what I say, it could be the most grievous of sins or the littlest of sins. God does not cast us aside. He is always with us. He may judge us. He may say, nope, there's a consequence here, but He is always with us.
And I love that forgiveness. There's times in my life when I've had these heavy burdens. In high school, I had an abortion. It's something that I hid for many years because I was so ashamed of it. And I
Mm,
thought,
mm,
God can forgive me for everything except this. This is just too big.
mm.
But I was going through a Bible study and I realized, like, if I didn't accept that, then
Mm,
his forgiveness, then it was saying that Jesus' death on the cross did not matter. And I was able to go to God and take even my heaviest burden to him and ask him to forgive me, and he did. And I felt such freedom. I still have to face
oh, that's
consequences.
awesome.
I still have to face regrets that I made that
Mhm.
choice. It's not easy, but knowing that we can go to God for anything. So we could either be like Cain and be like, I don't know what the problem is, or we can take those burdens to God and hand them over to Him and feel the freedom, the
Yeah,
lightness, the
yeah.
joy that He has forgiven us for all our sins.
Break the chains and just run free.
Hmm.
I love that. I love that. Well, tomorrow's reading is going to be Genesis chapter 7, verses 1, and read chapter 7, 8, 9, and chapter 10 through verse 5. And then switch over to First Chronicles 1, verses 5 through 7. Then back to Genesis in chapter 10, verses 6 through 20. Then we're going to jump back to First Chronicles 1, verses 8 through 16. If you're kind of feeling a little dizzy here, so am I. Then we go back to Genesis and we're going to read Genesis 10, verses 21 through 30, then back to First Chronicles. So we're kind of going through the genealogies here. Back to First Chronicles 1, verse 17 through 23, and then back, we'll finish up with Genesis 10, verse 31 through 32. And all of these, the verses and all of the chapters that we are going to read tomorrow, we will have that on the dailypodcast.net website. That's the dailypodcast.net website.
The Daily Bible Podcast
Oh,
.net website.
we will have those on the dailybiblepodcast.net website. That's the dailybiblepodcast.net.
And it seems like we're jumping around a lot, but it is the genealogies. It's just recorded in Genesis and it's
Mhm.
recorded in First Chronicles. So it's not word for word because sometimes an extra sentence is added here, but all the names are the same. All the people are the same. It's just showing that these records mattered to
Mhm.
God's people. They kept track of who was the son of who and who was the son of who because it all leads back to this lineage that God created, this lineage of that leads eventually to Christ, which we will get to in the New Testament.
Mhm. And it just will help as you read through it, it will help make sense. I don't want to say it's going to help you make more sense of things, but it will help you make sense and go, "Oh, yes."
I can see that.
So,
Yes, I love
yeah,
that. And you might not be able to pronounce all the names, and that's okay. You could do
that's
the best you
really
can as you're reading along.
that's really okay. So, we are sending you off with daily encouragement to get into the word and be the hands and feet of Jesus. Thanks for listening.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.